Good evening, my name is ANASTASIA MELNYK and here are the most important events that happened during this week in Ukraine. The situation in eastern Ukraine is still unstable. Destabilization is threatening in this region and could be the beginning of a new Crimea scenario. In response to this case, the Ukrainian parliament has passed a new law to increase punishment for separatist actions.
On the 7th April, in the night, the fire happened in the building of Kharkiv Regional Administration. While the National Guard was concentrated in the left wing of the administration building, few hundreds of separatists broke the windows and invaded the building.
We've done all we could for those riots to stop. We've tried to convince them that this is not right, that this is against the law. But people didn't understand us and started these extremist movements. They started to throw sound grenades, to shoot with rubber bullets, with guns. That's why we had to react on these acts of violence.
At 2 a.m., fire was stopped. 3 police officers were injured in clashes.
The measures that were used by these so-called peaceful protesters include everything, along with traumatic weapon. After clearing areas from protesters, we have found 6 boxes with Molotov cocktails. Operation was successful without a single shot, without causing physical damage to detainees. I personally observed it.
After the cleanup, 64 separatists were detained. The leftovers of medications and food were found in the small hall of administration, and judging by the quantity of it, people planned to stay here for a long time. There is total chaos in the lobby of regional state administration. Offices in the left wing of the building are almost burned down. Windows are broken, furniture and technique is crushed.
By the previous estimate of experts, the amount of loss of regional territorial community is around 10 million hryvnias. We'll be restoring and rebuilding all the damaged parts of the building.
Separatist clashes take place not only in Kharkiv. Also in Donetsk, on the 6th of April, pro-Russian activists seized the Donetsk Regional State Administration and Regional Council building, installed the flag of Russia on its roof. Attackers proclaimed the creation of Donetsk Republic that becomes a part of Russian Federation. In response to these events, the Ukrainian parliament, Verkhovna Rada, adopted the law that increased the punishment for separatist actions. According to the document authored by the member of parliament Sergei Sobolev, the actions against the territorial integrity and inviolability of Ukraine will be punished by imprisonment for a term 3 to 5 years. Same actions committed repeatedly or by a person who is a government representative are punished by imprisonment for a term of 5 to 10 years.
You cannot call men with guns peaceful protesters. This is called blunt terrorist actions, and in this regard we have to respond appropriately. The situation that we have in Crimea might happen again if we won't act firmly. For 1.5 days I was in Luhansk. Today I got back and met with Turchinov shortly after. I briefed on situation in Luhansk. The terrorist groups acting in Luhansk now, it consists of 150-200 men, and they are not peaceful protesters.
In Crimea, tensions between Ukrainian and Russian military forces remain high. This Sunday, a Ukrainian naval officer was killed by a Russian soldier. However, there are different versions on what caused the conflict between them.
A major in the Ukrainian Navy was killed by a Russian soldier. The junior sergeant Zaitsev shot Stanislav Karachevsky twice, in the head and chest. The Ukrainian major died immediately.
He was shot here by a Russian soldier. He was unarmed, he was just shot. People started running. When we got here, he was already dead, just lying here.
On that day, the Ukrainian military was packing up and getting ready to relocate to the mainland. They were to leave Crimea on the 9th of April. After packing up, Karachevsky and MELNYK came back to the checkpoint of their military unit, where Russians were stationed, and started to talk. This led to a conflict. Escaping, they tried to hide in dorms nearby.
A scuffle started between the Ukrainian soldiers that were coming back to Ukraine, our guys and Russians. People with guns came here. We tried to convince them to get back to checkpoint, so as not to cause a provocation. Then an attacking group appeared, so the guys ran into the dorms. Then the firing started. One Ukrainian soldier was shot, another Ukrainian soldier managed to hide in a room. But he was beaten up later and taken away by the Russians.
The dead body of Karachevsky was found on the 5th floor of dorms. It was where he managed to escape while running from the Russian soldiers.
Guys were unarmed. Russians were with guns, they had bulletproof vests, they had AK-47s.
According to the Crimean militia, Ukrainian soldiers threw stones and broke windows at the checkpoint. When police officers, together with the military patrol, tried to arrest the Ukrainian soldiers, 5 people attacked them, probably in an intoxicated state, and tried to take away their weapons. One of the attackers was detained, one was injured and died immediately, and 3 of them managed to escape. Residents tell a different story.
They say that the 2 cars of right sector arrived. Guys were warmed up with alcohol and tried to sight the control point, ripped the flag. That they were with grenades and traumatic weapon.
Russian side explained that the soldiers fired warning shots. The commander of Karachevsky, Igor Bedzai, said.
The soldier who was shooting explained that he fired 2 warning shots in the air while he was on the stairs. There are 2 bullets in the wall. Later in a fight, the soldier says he can't even understand how it happened. He pulled the trigger twice in the body of Karachevsky.
At the moment, Zaitsev is detained by Russian investigation committee, and criminal proceedings have begun. According to Bedzai, it's still unknown where MELNYK is. He was taken away and driving in the approximate direction of Sevastopol. Karachevsky leaves behind a wife and 2 young children.
This week, there was an attack on the Supreme Court of Ukraine. According to protesters, the judges tried to return former Ukrainian officials back to power. After the attack, the judges had to leave the building and pass through a corridor of shame.
On the 7th of April, the self-defense of Maidan, right sector and after Maidan tried to seize the Supreme Court of Ukraine building in Kiev and managed to disrupt the Congress of Judges, where a counter-revolutionary coup attempt could have occurred. Activists blocked all entries to the building and opened the front gate. When judges tried to enter through the back door, the protesters broke through and made the officials leave the building. Activists then created the corridor of shame. People stood in lines, leaving free space for judges to leave the court building. While standing in line, protesters shouted, "Shame!" Nobody got hurt, though the head of the Supreme Council of Justice, Alexander Lavrinovich, was nearly injured. Eventually, his security managed to rescue him from the crowd and accompanied Lavrinovich to his car.
We are trying to find out where they ran to. If they ran to their homes, let them stay there and wait for the prosecutor, preferably the Attorney General.
According to unofficial information, a judge congress will eventually happen, although it's still unknown when and where. As ex-Minister of Justice Sergei Golovaty said, Viktor Medvedchuk and Portnoy, the advisor of ex-president Viktor Yanukovych, along with the ex-president himself, are trying to make a counter-revolution through the judicial power. During the Congress that was disrupted, an attempt to put the supporters of the old regime into the court so that later they could have gotten Yanukovych back was a distinct possibility. To remind you, the plan at the Congress of Judges was to vote in 4 judges who could effect constitutional reform.
These are the most important news from Ukraine this week. We will continue to inform you. See you again in a week.